All right, so I wanted to make this video about Tassadar because right now in Heroes of the Storm, everybody is thinking, all right, this hero, his win rate is low. But I think right now is we're not really understanding where Tassadar's value is. So I'm about to tell you what a lot of things you might be doing wrong and about how some things you might want to do differently as Tassadar, because honestly, he could be one of the best heroes right now if you just learn to properly play him. We need to talk about, before we go into the build, which is pretty crucial, right? Because he actually has multiple builds. The most important part is how you're playing Tassadar. I think the biggest problem that we have as heroes is that most people, for what it's worth, when you watch my videos or you watch anybody else out there, it's all about movement, having mobility to attack and move and do all the things necessary in a game to dodge skill shots and make yourself less of a liability. Tassadar's biggest weaknesses are his health pool. His health pool did not get buffed. I feel like if we just give him a health buff, this would fix a lot of issues that you have currently with Tassadar. But the other thing is, his Q is a 2-second channel. If there's ever an ability in the game that requires you to channel, you now leave yourself open. What's worse is that you cannot cancel this channel. So heroes like Li Ming, heroes like Alarak are rising in popularity to counter Tassadar. So not only does he have a small health pool, but now he has to also stand still for 2 seconds. To compound issues, his auto attack, you also have to stand still. Now I gotta give the devs a lot of credit because they actually did something really cool with this auto attack to where you don't drop your bonus unless it's after 6 seconds, which means you can auto attack for a bit, move around if necessary, and then resume and start building that back up. I think that we'll need to see some buffs to this potentially to where maybe it charges a little faster, because if you have to be on your toes this much and you cannot cancel your Q and your auto attack is already a kind of a slow wind up, then you have to deal with things. These are the biggest weaknesses of Tassadar, which are the things that you have to play around, which means it's like, can I just stand there and skirmish? Probably not in most cases, which is why the build is also so important. But I want to talk about things that you can do well as Tassadar. The most underrated thing, so many times people come to my channel when I'm streaming and they say, what's the best hero to carry with? And what I tell them every time is a hero that can do two things. They can clear waves really well, and they can skirmish above average and or fight above average, meaning that they can potentially double soak as well as bring stuff to the table. Whether you're in bronze or GM, double soaking is one of the most OP things in the game, and it's very underrated. To have that 4% advantage with a level lead, to have that talent tier lead, these are things that they bring. Adding some team fight damage to the table, Tassadar does that. So with Tassadar, he has some of the best wave clear in the game. Prior to the rework, you would have to put your W down and wait till this gets stacked and then wait till 16 to where you could actually do something. Now, between his W and his Q, it's almost instant wave clear. It's very good, which means that you should be, in the early game, soaking as much as possible as Tassadar. We all want to be really cool and get those stacks and fight a lot, but his Q quest is probably the hardest to complete, but his auto attack is no big deal. You shouldn't worry too much about those quests in the early game because the build, the preferred build, probably doesn't consider those to be the better ones. So how can you get better as Tassadar? 1, double soak early. Be that bully that's like, you know what, I have better wave clear than almost anybody in the game. That's what Tassadar does. Because your health pool is such a liability, if you just get picked off in rotations, that's your fault, right? Like, you need to be able to do this safely and effectively, and you can do this pretty quickly as Tassadar. So double soak as much as possible, and then team fight at objectives early. His biggest spikes come later in the game. So if you can get to those bigger spikes earlier than the other team, or you keep your team at an even level, even if things go bad, then Tassadar becomes a better hero. So these are all things you should be doing well. And I feel like this video needs to talk about a lot of that before we ever get into the build. Because right now, everybody says, you know what, for what it's worth, Tassadar does do a decent amount of damage. It's not as consistent because so many people are getting countered and his win rate is low. But what you should be doing is that double soak and then fighting when you should, not when you want. And that's a huge difference because those minions are far more valuable than those heroes are in the early game. Far more valuable. Be the bully in the wave. Now, when it comes to Tassadar, outside of that, we've got to consider him as a mage, which means that his auto attack build is somewhat viable. I actually don't mind it. Just remember, it does require you to stand still. But I actually like his auto attack build. He has a good Q build, he has a good W build, and he has a good auto attack build. And we'll talk about the differences on when to pick those, because right now people are countering Tassadar. But we have to consider Tass, first and foremost, a mage. He kind of fits a hybrid role because of the auto attack, similar to a Hanzo or Sylvanas. But when we look at that on the bigger picture, he's nowhere even near the level of those two heroes. So we have to understand that Mage is pretty much, or Tassadar is pretty much a Mage, and that we should be looking to pair him alongside other either hybrid heroes or auto attack heroes and less skill shot heroes, because now you're running double Mage. And yes, we all want to play Tassadar, but that doesn't mean that's the best place for him. So these are a lot of things that I think right now for people that are worried about Tassadar, these are the issues that you're running into. Low health pool. The channeled ability at Q is probably the most detrimental thing for Tassadar. Your auto attack has a pretty cool workaround. Your W and your E are also great at setting up, and then both of your heroics are actually very viable. So for a lot of those things, you need to play around the lack of mobility that you have, despite the way that they try and interweave those in, level 4 talents and different things. Try and understand your role. Double soak early, skirmish when you need to, and wait for those late game power spikes. It's not to say he's bad early game in the damage department. It's just you're going to find more value in your 13 and 16 tier talents, and your 16 tier especially, in terms of what you do. So let's talk about the talents and the builds. The preferred build that I've found so far, and what seems to be a growing general consensus, believe it or not, is not one of the questing builds. I actually think that there is a time and a place for all of these. For Static Charge to be a talent, for Kadarian Amulet to be that, but Scion Fusion, this isn't nearly as sexy as the other ones. All this does is give you extra range and some mana return. And I'm advocating for this talent. Why? Because going into a W build is actually really good. The cast range on this gives it a little bit more generous flavor to be able to reach certain areas, to get certain zoning, and to make yourself less of a liability. That's not the sole purpose, but once you get later in the game, you're going to realize that, hey, look, if I use my EWQ, then it's going to make it more difficult to stay in mana. And we'll talk about that later, because your combo very much is going to be your W and your Q. Your E is on such a long cooldown with your force wall that it's actually not that big of a deal. It's a lot of mana, but when we consider these talents at 8 seconds for 60 mana and 55 mana at 7 seconds, that's a decent amount of mana, and you have generous cooldowns there. So a lot of that does go well for you. Scion Fusion is a better talent. It's good for double soaking. It's good for a lot of the things. You can skirmish really well. You can stay in fights for a long time. And we're going to go over this build. I'm going to go through this, and then I'm going to touch back on the other synergies. Okay, at level 4. Now, first off, I actually think Electric Fence is just hands down a very, very good talent. The only thing you have to remember about this is that baseline, it's 92 damage, so it's around 100. At level 1, they'll scale up. It slows them, it damages and slows them. So the slow is cool, and the damage is cool. But I've got to go back to the reminder that your force wall is a 21-second cooldown. That is a very long cooldown. It's almost heroic level cooldowns when you consider it for things that have this type of impact. It is very good when your team is trying to zone and isolate. It's very good for destroying a single target, because now you're doing bonus damage to an isolated target, and your team should be able to follow up on that. So because of those reasons, that's why I think Electric Fence is really good. But we also have very different things that we can do. Again, going back to the liability side, I think that if they buff his health bar too much, then some of these talents go by the wayside. Plasma Shield, while Resonance Beam is fully charged, gain a shield equal to 3% of max health every second, stacking up to 15%. This is really good, and this is really OP late game with one of your talents, because, well, you get it basically instantly and you don't have to channel for any period of time. But as I said, his auto attack has a very generous 6 seconds to where you can essentially, to a degree, A-move, so that it makes it a little bit easier. You're not getting maximum damage because of that, but this is very good to make sure that you can stay in a fight longer than you normally would. I think if you have a very good blow-up team, or if you have a Diablo, because Diablo can still shadow charge into a force wall and isolate a target, I still like Electric Fence. I think these are really good. The one talent I don't like is Induction. Even if I go Q build, I'm not a big fan of this. I haven't found the reason why anyone would like this, right? Like I already talked about, Li Ming being a counter towards Tassadar. Li Ming can't cast that fast, but 2 seconds is a long time. So if I cast my Q, I'm standing still for 2 seconds, then I got to get the heck out of there if somebody's shooting something at me. I think that's pretty much what induction is for, is to be like that, well, you know what, maybe we're going to make this a little bit different. Honestly, I wish they would give mobility and movement speed on this, where you get 15% movement speed on this, or 10% even, and then just make this to where if you hit a hero, it does something else. Because honestly, this feels like almost a must-have if you go Q build or you're against the team that is going to target you. If I'm versus a bunch of auto attack heroes, I don't worry about this as much. But given the current climate of Tassadar counters, this is almost a must-have if you go Q build and they have skill shot heroes that are just going to look at you, laugh for standing for 2 seconds, and then you die. Again, low health pool. But Plasma Shield, I think, is really good so you can fight a lot, so you can skirmish a lot. Electric Fence, remember, this should be used mainly as an executioner ability, a 21-second cooldown. I mean, to put this into perspective, 30 seconds for Go for the Throat on Cursed Bullet on Greymane. And that does hundreds of damage, where this does 100 damage per second, and keeping somebody there is not that easy. And 21-second cooldown says you want to use this to hopefully try and zone somebody out and kill them, and that's not always going to be a guarantee. So Plasma Shield tends to win out in most of those situations. Electric Fence, I think, is still a very good talent, and Induction just almost kind of feels bad that I have to pick it. At level 7, I love Psionic Echo with my W build. Casting Psionic Echo causes my next Shock Ray within 3 seconds to only cost 30 mana and create a Psionic Storm on the first enemy hero hit. Now, there's several reasons why this is good. Again, your level 16 spike is enormous. It is actually crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets nerfed down the road. But Psionic Echo, so the combo, of course, is I want a W, and then I want a Q, and I want to make sure that I hit those targets in that area. And I think, again, to further emphasize this point of Tassadar, he was a support hero. Now he's a mage. But to a degree, as we go through this build, you're going to find that he does a decent amount of damage, but he's also contributing to the overall factor of your team. He should not be considered the primary carry. I think that's the one thing that I can tell you. Can you be top siege damage and top hero damage a lot of the times as Tassadar? Absolutely. But can I support my team to where my entire team thrives? And look, if I'm second damage and first in siege damage, I am perfectly okay because I'm playing a role that has Force Wall, which is technically supporting my team. But as I get through the talent, you're going to find that Tassadar is going to get that damage, but it's going to help more of your team. Stop thinking of him as the primary carry and start thinking of him as a complementary piece to your team that also has overtuned damage, because that's the role you should consider Tassadar in. Psionic Echo says I can press W and then I can press Q, hit a target, and it's going to create a second Psi Storm. Now, this doesn't give me, it doesn't stack, it still doesn't stack, it never stacked if I had Psionic Echo back in the day. You can put 2 down in the same place, it doesn't stack, but you can create an area or you can make it so it's tougher to get there. And your Q baseline does a lot of damage, and because it's on such a short cooldown, is actually really nice. I think, again, these other talents are reduced for auto attack builds, although I actually don't mind beam alignment for more consistent poke late game, especially post 16, when you're going to have that full resonance beam charged instantly. This actually isn't bad because it gives you basic attack range and it reduces your shock ray, and I think that's really cool. This actually isn't bad, but considering the build that we're going, Psionic Echo is naturally going to make more sense as we see how this unfolds. Now, because of all this, there's 2 situations, and I think both of the heroics right now are good. First and foremost, if I'm going against something like an ETC and we need a mosh pit interrupt, I'm going Black Hole. Okay, look, you can't really convince me unless everybody on my team has interrupt and I have a Johanna and things like that. Those are generally reserved towards ranged assassins roles or your healer, and you can't always rely on just having 1, so having 2 is good. Plus, it's actually not bad. The damage is not that substantial. And if you can get a good W-E-R combo, or your R-E-W, however you want to do it, because this has a delay, your E has a delay, thus making it a little bit less reliable, but it's only a 70-second cooldown, which means you should have it for just about every fight. I think this is okay. I think that in certain situations, this is really good. In choke points, like Tomb of the Spider Queen and Cursed Hollow, choke points are abundant, and this actually works really well. If I'm on Hanamura, you couldn't convince me to go this, even if my life depended on it, unless there's an ETC there. So Archon is still a very good talent. It also has one of the most broken level 20 upgrades because Twilight Archon is still there. It's insane. So you gain a shield equal to 40% of your maximum health, and it lasts for 12 seconds, and it empowers your Resonance Beam. So the Resonance Beam deals 150 damage to the target and splashes 75 damage. And so this, of course, scales. This is level 0 damage. So this is actually a pretty heavy amount of damage by level 10, and through on it goes more. Now, furthermore, this is totally different than what we're used to. Heroes have their spell armor reduced by 20 for 2 seconds. Resonance Beam is fully charged while Archon is active. Going back to all of those things. Plasma Shield. Now you can start to see things unfold. Plasma Shield says I get a shield every second up to 3% up every second up to 15. Well, guess what? During this entire time, I have full Resonance Beam charge, which means that I'm doing pretty good for myself. Not only that, but I can auto attack, and then I can press W and Q. Let's say I hit W on a target. They're running. I hit them with my Q. They're taking double Size Storm. They go from one Size Storm to the other, and they have 20% spell armor reduction. That is insane. Again, the idea that I can become somewhat of a support hero. I'm now helping my team with force walls. I'm doing a ton of damage. I'm reducing spell armor, and 2 of my spells actually do a lot of damage. My Q in particular, with 20% spell armor reduction, is basically a flame strike at this point. And then I've got my W, which we'll continue to invest in, and things are working pretty well. We're not even done yet in terms of the armor reduction. This is just the start of it. So I get the auto attack damage from my Resonance Beam. I'm getting the splash damage if people are near, and I'm getting spell armor reduction. Tassadar now has come online in a significant way, and he's actually been online since level 1 because his damage is not bad. So Archon is very, very, very good. This is a 90-second cooldown, so it is a little different, as in you might not have this for every single fight, but you should have it for every major fight. And those can be the difference between snowball or not snowball. So Archon is very good. Black Hole, I think it's situational, but most of the time I'm going to consider Archon as my primary option because the spell armor reduction is pretty significant. Level 13. To further go into what I was just talking about. First off, by the way, if I'm going against something like a Consume Souls Mephisto, I probably will go Oracle because then I'll just stand still for 30 spell armor. It is what it is. But again, having different things available to you. Let's go down that same vein of I actually do almost the best wave clear in the game in terms of minions. Like I actually just destroy stuff with 1 W and Q. It's that easy. Then I have decent to above average baseline hero damage. It's not the best, but it's pretty dang good. And I have a force wall which can isolate targets and set up kills, which almost no other hero can do. So I'm doing insane wave clear. I have pretty good damage. Again, don't think of yourself as the primary carry. Think of yourself as somebody that's going to help your team get kills while simultaneously killing them. It's just the way it is. So now, feedback. When an enemy hero is affected by Psionic Storm, Resonance Beam slow is increased to 50%, which means they'll take a few more ticks in that. And it reduces physical armor by 25. Think about this. We're in the middle of a fight. I pop Archon. You have negative 20 spell armor and negative 25 physical armor. Good luck, because I do a lot of auto attack damage with my Resonance Beam, and my spells actually hit like a truck because they're actually pretty well tuned. Feedback now between Archon and feedback. Not only am I setting up kills, am I doing damage, but my team also benefits in the middle of all this. There's almost nobody that says, you know what, this is okay. Again, stop thinking that you need to be full Q build, full auto attack build every single game, and start considering yourself as a complementary piece to not just your other ranged assassin, but your entire team. Your entire team benefits from what you do, whether it's from force walls to wave clear to hero damage to armor reduction, whether it's an auto attacker or a spell damage. Everybody is benefiting because you are that good of a hero. not this 45% win rate that everybody's touting right now. Because the 45% win rate, I think the only changes we might see are a small health buff. And then the reign of Tassadar will completely overwhelm your games, and you'll be like, hot dang, this guy's really good. I do think there is a place for Shadow Walk. This does not give you an iframe. It doesn't make you invincible. This just means you're stealth and you can actually be seen. You can't use your abilities. This gives you 40% movement speed and 25 armor. I think this is kind of a rare situation to be able to use this against maybe certain dive heroes, but even then I'm not a big fan of this at all. It's a 60-second cooldown. It just feels bad. Oracle, again, this actually isn't bad. Look, if I'm going to other builds, if I do go Q build, if I go auto attack build, I might consider this. Even though auto attack, I might go feedback. But if I'm going against like a Consume Souls, a Pyroblast, I might be forced, depending on my healer, to go Oracle. This is probably the talent where it's kind of okay. This is passive, where let's say somebody casts a Pyroblast at me and I have a Malfurion that doesn't have burst heals. I just stand still and I have 30 spell armor. Like, that's okay to do. So there's situations where I think Oracle is really good because of that. The reveal on that, the 45 seconds, I feel like that should be like 30 seconds. I don't know why it's 45 seconds. But revealing an area can be good to give information, but it's not that great. The passive on this is the cool part. Level 16. Here's where things get really, really interesting, right? Because you actually have two talents here that are crazy, crazy good. First off, Psychic Shock. Psionic Storm deals damage 25% faster. The cool thing about this is that Psionic Echo does not say it casts an untalented Psionic Storm. It creates a Psionic Storm. So that helps things out to get the damage out there. Again, they don't stack, but it means that they tick up faster. And if we consider all the things that are going on, and let's say I get into one of those major team fights where I pop Archon, 20% spell armor reduction, you're taking damage faster while you have armor reduction. I'm hitting you for auto attacks. Like this is your time to really do a lot of damage. Psystorm can zone out an area. You can W and you can Q a target, making things very, very good for yourself and for your team. Everybody is getting blasted. You can auto attack those people in the Psystorms, lower their physical armor. They're taking extra damage. There's just so much that goes into these late game spikes. I think this is very good for W build. And I think this is probably the number one pick. But we're talking about 1A and 1B. Why? Executor's Will. Activate to gain full Resonance Beam charge, 15% spell power, and cause your basic and heroic ability cooldowns to regenerate 25% faster. This effect lasts as long as Resonance Beam remains at full charge. You have 6 seconds to just go and auto attack something. It's not hard in the middle of a fight to find somebody. Not only that, but this goes on cooldown instantly. So you get 15% spell damage, you instantly get Resonance Beam charge, and you get cooldown reduction, which is kind of insane. And this lasts as long as Resonance Beam remains at full charge, thus making this a very good talent. I don't know if this is an every game or every situation talent, but these are basically neck and neck for me. For me, I'm probably going to be going Executor's Will for most of my situations, but Psychic Shock also fits into that same category when I consider myself a complementary piece and less of a carry piece. This is if I really need to carry because we didn't draft a lot of damage. I think this is where it comes in. Then I might be altering my build as such, but still, Psystorm is really good. The idea that Psystorm goes down, I like the way that they've tuned it, the changes, so it's still valuable. Again, on wide open maps, I might consider auto attack build, or I'm probably not considering Tassadar at all. Q build, I don't like this unless I've gone into different builds where I've gone beam alignment, and this is against very specific heroes. Maybe a Deathwing, but even then I just don't like standing still, and I think I can do more as a teammate and against a team with these other two talents. I think Thermal Lance has a place, but as we've seen, most level 16 talents are pretty impactful, and for most other heroes in the game, level 16 talents that do percentage-based damage aren't exactly the hot. This isn't far off, but, you know, I'm just going to say these other two are much better. I don't think you can't really go wrong with either of these two. I just think that with Psionic Storm and Psionic Echo, Psychic Shock is there. If you didn't go Psionic Echo, then you're probably going to go Executor's Will. Level 20, I already mentioned this. Since you're going Archon, Twilight Archon. Basic attacks while in Archon form increase its duration by 2 seconds. These are massive fights at level 20, and you can move around the map. This is how you can end a game. You can walk up and run people down. You can walk them down as Tassadar. They cannot fight you. The more they fight you, the more that you get stacks. You can always hit minions. You can hit walls. You can do all of these things. You're getting all of the benefits that we mentioned here, where your resonance beam does more, their spell armor is reduced, and your resonance charge is full, so you're hitting for max damage, and you have all the benefits of what's going on there. So Twilight Archon becomes absolutely monstrous in the late game. This is still really good. There's a lot of really good level 20 talents here for Tassadar. I'm not going to lie to you, because like they're all insane, except for maybe Force Barrier, because it still is an 11-second cooldown. And considering the power of Twilight Archon, and this one, Kala's Gift, gain 4% spell power for yourself and each nearby ally hero, up to 20 total spell power. Like, your total bonus is shared with all contributing allies. This is really crazy to consider, that you're going to have potentially 20 spell power while simultaneously reducing spell armor. But if I go Archon and I go Kala's Gift, I better hope we fight fast, because then I only have 12 seconds of Archon as opposed to potentially Infinite Archon, which is why Infinite Archon tends to win out. Kala's Gift is not bad. This still gives you a lot of poke damage. It's going to be there permanently. You don't have to worry about Archon being active. So Kala's Gift is really good for all of those situations. Again, this Executor's Will can help contribute to making sure to have lower cooldown reduction on different things, but having Kala's Gift available with the extra spell power, the Executor's Will, all of a sudden we have insane cooldown reduction, we have insane spell power, and this does work out. When it comes to Kugel Blitz, each hero hit by Black Hole's center creates a psionic storm at their location. This is really ambitious. When it comes to really ambitious talents, it means that you're going to see some really cool plays, and you're going to be incentivized to pick stuff like that because it could look really cool. I think on very rare circumstances, again, those choke point maps, and where I can put down a force wall and then press R in the middle of that, or I have somebody that can absolutely keep people in place, that's actually really cool because it's a lot of damage and chokes, and you'll see some pretty cool highlights with this play. But I think in terms of consistency, what you're going to get, like if I went Black Hole, I'm probably just going to go Kala's Gift, because it means I'm probably on a different build. And so for that, that's why the old W build into getting shields, into Size Storm, into Archon, because again, Archon pairs well with this. My W pairs well with everything that I'm doing. He pairs even better with Archon. My auto attacks that I'm getting at max charge are helping my feedback, and then Psychic Shock is helping to do damage faster, which is really good. And Executor's Will, if I opt to go this, is also good with the bonus spell power and the cooldown reduction, as long as my Resonance Beam is active, and it's pretty easy to keep it at full charge. Level 20, again, there's a lot of good choices here, and that's why W build is the way to go. Before I touch on the other builds, which they're not going to be nearly as long, please consider what I've been saying this whole time. Double soak like crazy in the early game. You're an absolute beast at it. Just remember, you have no E key and you have no Q key. That doesn't mean just randomly run around by yourself and double soak, because if you get caught out, well, that's always bad. But understand that while your team is off doing a camp or doing this, you can have the impact. Just make sure you're watching your minimap to avoid being ganked. Try to consider yourself a complementary piece that's going to reduce physical armor, that's going to reduce spell armor, and it's going to do a lot of damage in the middle of that, but you're setting up 4 people. Not just yourself, you're setting up 4 other people for success, which is far greater than setting up 1 for a tiny bit more success with some of the other talents you could go. So because of that, just remember, double soak monster, setup kill, armor reduction, all of these things say that you're still a pseudo support with a ton of punch, man. A ton of punch. It's really good. As far as the other builds go, I actually don't mind auto attack build. I think this is situational when you know you can get away with standing still auto attacking, because there's a lot of mages in the game and some of them are going to be targeting you. This isn't always a guarantee, but if you do go into auto attack build, make sure that you go into the extra auto attack range at level 7. This gives you a little bit more poke with your Q build, which can lead to some potential changes at level 16, which means you can do 8% damage every few seconds if you hit your Q. Just remember, your Q is a 2-second channel that you cannot cancel And that is why I think a lot of people are having trouble as Tassadar, because I think Q build has the higher single target damage output, but it doesn't necessarily contribute to success, because if you miss that and you don't have anything in other talents and you're taking yourself out of a fight for 2 seconds to do 0 damage, it feels a little bad. So a lot of that goes in. So auto attack into that, into plasma shield, into the beam alignment, I think is really cool. And then you can continue to go into Archon or Black Hole, either one of those. I think Archon's still going to be good. And then, of course, feedback is really good here, but Oracle, if needed, into Executor's Will, I think is going to be the better, more safer pick. And then Thermal Lance if needed. And then, of course, the level 20 talents pretty much fall in the same vein. So that's pretty much the auto attack build in a nutshell, because, look, you don't really need instructions on how to auto attack. It's okay to auto attack tanks, but you're just going to be standing there and things are going to bounce around and your damage is going to look okay, but are you really killing somebody? That's going to be the hard part with auto attack. Again, it's based on your team. If somebody picked a Kalthos and I don't have a bunch of stuff to worry about, I'll probably go auto attack build because my wave clear is still good and I can contribute in other ways, more guaranteed ways, where I'm playing with another mage that doesn't have those same guarantees. Again, Electric Fence, I take it with where you will in terms of your team and whether you can get that single target kill. I think it's nice, but I don't think it's necessary. If you're going to go Q build, again, induction, I touched on this earlier. You might need that depending on who you're going against. And of course, beam alignment, so you get more shock rays out, is going to be there. I think arc discharge is just such a... I don't know what to make of this. 13, everything stays the same. And then, of course, I don't necessarily need to go Thermal Lance if I went Q build. If I went Q build, I'm probably going to go Executor's Will, so I can just auto attack a bunch, get cooldown reduction, because I can auto attack from further away and just press Q a lot. And then level 20, probably I would go Call Gift in that instance, because most of my damage is going to come outside of heroics, and that's going to be okay. So those are the builds. I think that if you're here, you're watching this, you're trying to figure out what is the build for Tassadar, what do I need to do differently in terms of what can I bring to the table for myself, because that's what everybody thinks about first. But I think we got to look at him on a bigger scale. What can I do for the team? If it's a matter of double soaking and getting in team fights and contributing to those team fights in more ways than just my raw damage, then you're going to understand that Tassadar is actually probably overtuned and everybody's just playing him in a subpar way. That's not to say that Tassadar can't be countered pretty easily because of his low health pool. I play Lunara against him. I hit him on the flank. He misses his Q because, well, it's pretty easy to dodge. He can't press W on me. I press R on him twice. I press W, and then he's at like 25% health because that's how good Lunara's damage is post at 13 and 16. And Tassadar is going to have to hope that he gets some type of help, which is why there's going to be certain ways that you have to play Tassadar. I think because of the abundance of changes, it was even difficult for me. The lack of being able to press Alt-Q, the lack of being able to press E. We're playing not just a new Tassadar. It feels like we're playing a new hero. And again, I got to give credit to the devs for their resonance beam changes, his auto attack changes. It's probably one of the most healthy changes to the game that you'll ever see in terms of what it could have been and what it used to be versus what it is now. I actually really love this change. So it gives you some play style changes, some different ways to play the game. And I think as people learn to play Tassadar more and more and realize that you're more of a complementary piece and a part-time carry piece, you're going to realize that Tassadar is actually ridiculously OP. And for all of you at lower ranks that are still A-ramming 2.5 minutes into the game, learn to soak, learn to double soak. This hero can do it for you. That's Tassadar. So get out there and see how it works for you.